Karen Armstrong, so many initiatives we're hearing are developing. The Charter is, well, it's working. Now, how will we measure compassion?
Well, I think we've got to be clear that we're not suddenly going to see a world transformed overnight. I think that one of the things on our new Charter website, which is being worked on at the moment, is that we're going to have on the homepage a map, and you'll be able to click onto the map and see all the activities that are happening, say, in Ethiopia, where our Ethiopian partner, who is an ambassador to the United Nations, is doing huge work spreading the Charter in the African countries. South Africa, which has been a major player because Archbishop Desmond Tutu was one of the first supporters of the Charter. The United States, where there are all kinds of initiatives going. And now in the Muslim world, I'm starting to promote the Charter personally in the Middle East with the help of Badr Jaffa, who is a TED enthusiast and is becoming an absolute tireless promoter of the Charter there. So first of all, we've got to get the Charter known. I think one of the markers will be the frequency, getting the word compassion into public discourse, where it's been notably absent. But I've just come back from Tehran, for example, and at the ceremony where I was, there was compassion was one of the words that kept coming up from the president of Iran, from the vice president of Iran, and a very kind of new spirit coming up there. Now, I'm not saying that's anything to do with the Charter. I don't think that's come on their radar screen yet. But certainly, I think there is a kind of a change there. So let's get the word compassion out there. People beginning to see, especially with young people, I'd like it to be cool to be compassionate.
Still, it has to be something more than just a buzzword.
Yeah, it's not just a buzzword. Just getting it into people's consciousness is the first thing, as something that has to be done, which it hasn't been up till now. Now the task is to work out how practically to implement this. First, in our daily lives, all of us have to begin with ourselves. We can't go around promoting compassion if we ourselves are guilty of sort of uncompassionate speech, uncompassionate action, and careless attitudes there. It has to start with yourself. But it's a symbiotic process. You're also working in society. In Seattle, for example, which declared itself the first US city of compassion, they are working very hard. These guys are not a bunch of hippies. They are big officials in Microsoft there in Seattle. And they are working very hard practically to see how can we implement the Charter in business dealings or in environmental policies in the city. They're starting off with those. Other cities might have a very different. Here in Amsterdam, you have particular issues and particular problems. Well, how do we practically bring, and this needs a lot of thought. There's no one single answer, and every region will have a different way of interpreting it. But so it's not that we will issue diktats from, the central office, as it were. This has to be, requires creative, inventive thought.
Still, we are not all city councillors, so we cannot declare our city a city of compassion. So if you get back to the more personal, individual level, what to do?
Well, I think just hold on until January, because my new book is going to be published, which will tell you in 12 steps what to do. And you start off in step 1 by learning about compassion in your own tradition and other people's traditions. One of the things is to find out how it is translated in other traditions, because you can get good ideas from that. And you work through learning about compassion, feeling compassion for yourself. Unless you can feel compassion for your own pain, you'll be easy to be dismissive of other people's pain. It makes you conscious of it. Gradually, watching the way you behave, watching the way, and that's the fourth or fifth step is mindfulness, watching the way unkind thoughts come into your mind, and how frequently you might snap at somebody, or and then combined in the sixth step with action, each day trying to implement one act that is the positive embodiment of the golden rule. Do to others what you would like have done unto you. Making life a little bit better one time a day. And then also the negative version of the golden rule, biting back that beastly, impatient remark, or that dismissive look, or that impatient shrug when the girl is slow at the checkout. That kind of thing. And then when you've got that, that has become a daily habit, upping your game and doing 2 practices of those per day. And then we move out to start thinking about the rest of the world, learning their various exercises, meditative exercises that don't require you to sit cross-legged and say but you can do it while you're walking down the street, riding your bicycle, doing your household chores, sitting on your commuter tram, bringing other people into your mind in a Buddhist way.
What will be the effect?
The last one is love your enemies.
Yeah, that was exactly my question. What will be the effect on those people who will not be ready for compassion or not want to be compassionate?
Well, we're not going to convert those overnight, but what we've got to do is try to create a climate where there's more and more of a groundswell among people, ordinary people like ourselves, that uncompassionate speech is unacceptable, that uncompassionate policies are unacceptable. And it's slow work, but look, it can be done. In the 1960s and 70s, the civil rights activists and the feminists changed the way we both think and speak about race and gender. When I was growing up, there was a fashion shade, can you believe it or not, called nigger brown. Now that would be now unthinkable today. No one even thought about it. And we are very conscious about inclusive gender language now. I was reading a book the other day which talked persistently about mankind. You couldn't do that now. This is the kind of consciousness we want to raise. They used to call it raising your consciousness. First you have to raise your own, and then gradually, as more and more people who sign up to the Charter take this on board, this can become unacceptable. I think too we have to stand up and be counted when we see in our own societies, our own politicians, coming up with uncompassionate policies, careless, biased remarks about other peoples in other parts of the world, and other cultural or religious traditions. And we have to put pressure, write to our newspapers, get a Twitter campaign. I don't understand twittering, I'm too old, but get a Twitter campaign going when these things happen, to raise, to be on the lookout when you see in your own immediate circle, in your place of work, among your friends, as well as in your government. Say, no, this is dangerous. And it is not only injuring the other people, it is also injuring ourselves when we speak and think and act in this way.
How much of this compassion is a political thing?
A lot of it is political, because it seems to me that unless we start implementing more compassionate policies, unless we implement the golden rule globally, so that we treat all peoples, all nations, as we would wish to be treated ourselves, we're not going to have a viable world. A lot of the problems that we're having today have sprung from the fact that we've treated, in the Western countries, certainly Britain and with our colonial history, has treated some of these Middle Eastern countries as though they are cheap gas stations. promoting rulers that we wouldn't have for 1 second in our own countries, who deny their people rights that we in the West take for granted. People like the Shahs of Iran, Saddam Hussein, who was our protege originally. And we have, in order to get a strategic, economic and oil hold in this world. Now now we're beginning to taste the fruits of this. So we need a global democracy. We're great on saying how important it is to get democracy in individual countries, but we also need a global democracy where all people's voices are heard and taken seriously and their aspirations are respected, just as we wish our own aspirations to be respected. Because now, this is not just a nice thing. This is essential for the survival of our planet and our species. It was possible for us in the good, well, they're not good, bad old days of British colonialism to treat the natives with a certain amount of contempt because they could come after us only with sticks and stones, inferior weapons, and we could mow them down with our superior armies, and that's what we did. This can no longer be the case because we now are so interconnected economically. When one market goes down, there's a ripple effect on the markets all around the globe. Politically, what happens in Gaza today is now likely to have repercussions tomorrow in London, Amsterdam even, and New York. Electronically, we're bound together. We can see, so we're no longer in isolation, and we are no longer living in cities where Amsterdam is filled with Dutch people and London is filled with British people. We're now living in multicultural societies, and that has to be negotiated and accepted as a fact of life.